All right, Alexander, let's talk about the G7 and so much to talk about, to be quite honest. There's Zelensky at the G7. There's Zelensky one day saying that Bakhmut has fallen, and then everything changed, and a whole bunch of denials were given. Fog of war. Zelensky's English is not so good. Bakhmut hasn't fallen. There's the meeting with Modi that he had. There's Biden skipping out of the Quad meeting. There's the fact that Lula was stood up by Zelensky. So they begged Lula to meet with Zelensky, and Zelensky didn't show up. And Lula, from what I understand, was very, very upset. Can you imagine
furious.
That? Standing up the president of Brazil. It's crazy stuff. Anyway, a lot of different narratives to talk about from the G7.
A lot of different narratives, but of course
Japan.
the narrative in the British media today and yesterday was, and I quote directly from the Financial Times, Zelensky dominates G7 and confronts the Putin enablers. this is how, I mean, he was the star of the show. You know, he's the rock star. He's Roadshow has reached Hiroshima. He's made all these comparisons between Bakhmut and Hiroshima. Very strange. Very inappropriate comparisons, by the way, I should say. But anyway, let's skip that. He meets with Modi. Modi has to listen to this person. I don't get the sense that anything much came out of that. There's no sign that Indian policy is going to change. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And then, incomprehensibly, poor Lula is brought all the way from Brazil in order to meet Zelensky, and Zelensky doesn't turn up. I mean, and I understand he's not just annoyed. I understand he is absolutely furious about it. I mean, he's supposed to be trying to get some kind of a mediation operation up and running, and he's treated in this incredible way by the president of Ukraine, who, in his own mind, Lula's mind, he is trying to help. So he is furious, and he won't just be furious with Zelensky, mind. He'll be furious with the Americans, with the G7 organizers for, dragging him all this way to this meeting and having him stood up in that way and humiliated in that kind of a way. So Lula is very, very angry. And Modi isn't going to be pleased either, because, of course, Modi, India, is part of this Quad, the so-called Quad that we've been hearing so much about, which is the United States, Japan, Australia, India, the four big Indo-Pacific powers. And, of course, everybody knows that the Quad is supposed to be about confronting China. It's not said so, but that's what it's supposed to be. And it's not an alliance exactly, but it's supposed to be a sort of alliance in embryo. And what Modi has found over the last couple of months, in fact, beyond that, before even the start of the Ukraine crisis, he's found, and the Indians have found, that the Americans are very difficult people to work with, and that they have their own agendas, and that they always expect India to agree with those agendas. So Modi is pushed into meeting Zelensky. There's nothing very much that they have to say to each other. He's not going to change his policies. But what he finds is that the Quad meeting that was supposed to happen in Sydney has been called off. Biden is off to Washington, supposedly to deal with the debt ceiling crisis. So already Modi's going to be annoyed about that. There is another meeting of the Quad, which is going to happen in Hiroshima, and you have the inevitable photo op. You have a statement which is supposed to be about China and repeats much of the language of the G7, but notably and interestingly, it didn't actually anywhere mention China by name, and I wonder why. And then, of course, as you rightly said, Biden skips away again. So Modi isn't pleased. So these two important leaders of these two important countries are finding that the way that they're being treated at the G7, really, both by Zelensky and I have to say by Biden as well, it doesn't show them the respect that they're entitled to. as leaders of extremely powerful and very large countries. And so Lula returns to Brazil absolutely furious, and Modi is going to return to India perhaps less angry, but still feeling, frankly, let down.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Hiroshima statement, I just think it's in line with our analysis that we made on Zelensky, which is that the more he's out of Kiev and the more he interacts with the press and with the media outside of the controlled environment in Kiev, the more of a fool he makes
Yes.
of himself. And the Russians must be loving
Yeah.
seeing Zelensky traveling the world. I mean, it's perfect for them. The more you see Zelensky outside of Ukraine, the more people realize what a fool he is.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that about the statement with Hiroshima and Bakhmut, a very inappropriate statement to put it mildly. And the fact that Zelensky ditches Lula, Biden ditches Modi, it's absolute proof that they really don't respect these countries. They don't. Period. They don't view them as equals. They don't even. I mean, how do you charm a country like the Financial Times puts it? You're charming Brazil when you stand them up and don't even attend a meeting with them. I mean, what kind of charm offensive is that? Or how do you negotiate some sort of a ceasefire or a peace deal? Or how do you convince Brazil to go against Russia and place sanctions on Russia when you don't even give them an hour or two of your time, a meeting which you begged to get with Brazil, not the other way around? Brazil wasn't begging to meet Zelensky. Zelensky was begging to meet Brazil. This isn't diplomacy. This is a disaster.
Oh,
these
absolutely.
people, these people these are terrible people. I mean, you set up to meet someone and you don't show up for that meeting.
I know.
I mean, this is childish stuff.
Without providing a proper explanation of why that didn't happen, by the way, because there's been no real explanation for the fact that Zelensky didn't turn up. But can I just say, you're absolutely right about Zelensky. I mean, he's an absolute shambles.
Lukashenko, from what I understand, Alexander, real quick, Lukashenko, during the victory parade on the 9th of May, from what I understand, Lukashenko was very, very ill.
That's right.
He showed up, though.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
He showed up, and he attended the celebrations. I just
Absolutely.
wanted to throw that out there.
No, I know, absolutely. I mean, there are some meetings, there's some things that you have to attend. Look, Zelensky decided not to skip a meeting with the president of Brazil without offering an apology, an explanation, whatever it was. But anyway, he didn't, and it goes beyond the shambles of the meeting with Lula and other things, because you have these chaotic comments about Bakhmut. He tells Biden, and through Biden's CNN, well, Bakhmut's fallen, but it's no big deal. It's a place of little significance. It's all been destroyed anyway. So that's what he says. A couple of hours later, he turns around and says, well, actually, it's not occupied. The Russians don't control it. We're still fighting there. I mean, he can't even get that kind of story straight. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the more people see of Zelensky, the more shambolic he looks. But Zelensky, to be frank, is an inconsequential person. The President of the United States, the President of France, the Prime Minister of Britain, the Chancellor of Germany, these should not be inconsequential people. And yet that is exactly how they come across. So, Macron, a couple of weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago, he was in Beijing. He was with Xi Jinping. He gives this extraordinary interview on his plane back, saying, how China is, we have to move towards multipolarity. He takes all these Chinese talking points, he makes them his own. Now he says at Hiroshima, our great task is to confront China. So he does a complete change of position in a couple of days. Scholz says, Germany isn't going to get involved in the Ukraine war. We're supplying everything we can, but we can't supply fighter jets. Everybody knows that what Scholz says is meaningless. It is of no importance. Sunak, Prime Minister of Great Britain, talks about how we must all take on China, as if Britain is in any kind of position to take on China. And the President of the United States, he used to dominate these kind of summits. The President, whoever he was, I mean, the President was the leader of the Western world, and people look at him again, I think, and well, was it he got the name of another leader wrong or something like that? I mean, he's already making blunders.
South Korea,
exactly. He's already making mistakes like that all the time, and the impression he gives to me is somebody who is both rude and belligerent and frankly unpleasant. I mean, it's not just that he's, all over the place and not really attending to things, but he's just very aggressive. Watching that press conference again, I was struck by how aggressive he was, actually. And that's the G7. I mean, it's a terrible thing. But go beyond the performance, the poor performance of these leaders. Two things to say. Firstly, you talked about the fact that they don't have respect for these countries. They don't. And an important clue for me was provided by an article in the Financial Times, which is all about the G7. It was the lead editorial, Financial Times, very close to the Biden administration. It said the leaders of the world's most advanced economies. So they think of themselves as the world's most advanced economies. Well, that was indisputably true 30 years ago. Can one really say it like that today? But that's how they clearly still imagine themselves. And the second is an unbelievably belligerent, confrontational, aggressive final statement about China, in which they're basically accusing the Chinese of economic coercion. I mean, are you kidding me? China, economic coercion, where, we've sanctioned half the world, that, they're criticizing the Chinese for economic coercion. And they're saying that, they're against any unilateral actions in Taiwan, the Taiwan Straits, the South and East China Seas. And they say that in a way that makes it absolutely clear that what they're talking about is any actions by China. And for me, it was reading that statement, I get the clear impression that they're working towards a situation where in a year or two time, they will recognize Taiwanese independence, fully expecting that will occasion a crisis with China. And I think they imagine that they can prevail in that crisis in some kind of way. And that's what it's all about now.
Yeah, I agree with you. The G7 was a circus. It was a meeting of clowns, very unprofessional clowns, to put it that way. But the purpose was to declare their intentions towards China.
Yeah.
I think that's clear. I mean, in a way, it was a ridiculous G7 meeting, but it was also a historic G7 meeting because I think, you're seeing these countries come out and openly state that they are going to target China. I mean, that's it. They have their sights set on the destruction of China. That's how I saw the meeting. Even Ursula from the European Union. What is the EU even doing there anyway? She was there and she's talking about a 600 billion slush fund to combat the Belt and Road initiative from China. I mean, they're focused now on China.
Absolutely.
Over the next couple of years.
Yes. So as I said, war with China over Taiwan, you completely ignore Chinese red lines. Chinese red lines aren't important. And I understand people have feelings about China, but it's absolutely essential to say that what the Chinese have been saying about China is that they're not concerned about Taiwan so long as it doesn't declare independence or make any move in that direction. For the moment, they have not been looking to change the status quo. But it's absolutely clear to me that the Biden administration and its helpers in Europe are now working towards upturning the status quo in the Pacific. They're preparing to confront China over Taiwan. As I said, I think that it is now inevitable that there will be at some point over the next few years a declaration of independence by Taiwan, and that the US and its allies now are preparing for that and for a military confrontation with China in the Pacific, which seems incredible to me. But I defy people to go to that statement and to read it in any other way.
Yeah, same playbook as Ukraine. Same playbook. Don't just Ukraine. Just say that you're not going to enter NATO. That's all you have to do. Just say you won't enter NATO, and we avert a war. It's the same thing with Taiwan now. Just Taiwan, just don't declare independence. U.S. just don't recognize Taiwan. EU don't recognize Taiwan. But we all see it coming.
Absolutely, it's a train that can't stop, and I don't get the sense that the drivers have any desire to stop it. I think just as was the case with Ukraine. I mean, I remember that Munich Security Conference in 2022 when they were all intoxicated with enthusiasm about the war in Ukraine, which they thought would lead to the collapse of Russia. I remember they were drunk with euphoria. I think they're feeling exactly the same way about China now. There's an article in the Financial Times, don't take China's economy seriously, don't be persuaded that there's a real boom there. This is all it's a paper dragon. All we need to do is just puff, and we'll blow it away. And again, one does wonder what planet these people are living on and what kind of information they're getting and from whom.
Yeah, and the Financial Times also had an interview with Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton said that the war in Ukraine has actually now dissuaded China from making any moves on Taiwan, and China has seen how Ukraine has beat back the Russian military, so now China is afraid to do anything with Taiwan, and so all is looking good for the neoliberal plan, and it is Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton is still the matriarch. I was going to say the patriarch. The Clinton clan, Bill and Hillary, they're still the ones that control the State Department, Nuland, Sullivan, Blinken. So when she says stuff like that, that's the policy that her underlings are going to follow.
Absolutely, and all I can say about all of that and about understanding the war in Ukraine, she should read the Chinese media, because they're drawing exactly the opposite conclusions from the war in Ukraine. They're looking at all these American weapons that are failing in Ukraine. They're looking at the fact that the Russian economy has withstood the sanctions pressure. And they're saying, well, if the Russians can do that, so much weaker and so much smaller than us than they are, what more can we do? The Russians can outproduce the US in shells, and they've got a fraction of our industrial capacity. We're not going to have any problems. That's the real conclusion that the Chinese are drawing, which is not in any way to suggest that, they're looking for a war, because I don't think they are. But it seems to me, inexorably where we're heading. And of course, you can always do that. You can, if you prefer, take your ideas from Hillary Clinton, great strategic genius that she is, or you can look at the Chinese media and draw your conclusions from what the Chinese themselves are actually saying. But I can tell you without any doubt that the Bidens, all of those people, it's Hillary Clinton that they're listening to.
Yep. I was going to say that. I was going to say, Alexander, you know exactly who they're going to take their advice from. That's clear. Anyway, all right. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Rockfin, ODYSEE, BitChute, and Telegram, and go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care.